31 years old and I thought signing a lease was the most stressful part of becoming a landlord. I was wrong. The moment I turned the key to my own front door and heard voices inside, my stomach dropped straight to the floor. Let me back up. My name is Alara. I work in healthcare administration, which sounds impressive until you explain that it mostly means spreadsheets, insurance codes, and 12-hour days staring at a monitor. I'm not complaining. That job paid for the condo. 3 years of skipping vacations, bringing lunch from home, and saying no to every girls' trip my coworkers planned. 3 years of watching my savings account inch upward while I lived in a studio apartment so small I could touch both walls if I stretched my arms out. When I finally closed on the condo, I cried in the parking garage. Ugly, cried. A security guard knocked on my car window to check if I was okay. The condo was in a neighborhood I loved, but couldn't afford to live in full-time, not on top of the mortgage itself. So, the plan was always to rent it out, use the rental income to cover the mortgage, build equity, eventually move in myself once my finances had more breathing room. It was a solid plan. Responsible, even. The kind of plan my dad would have been proud of. I'd found tenants through a property management app. A couple. I'll call them the Hendersons. Both teachers, steady income, excellent references, no pets. They'd passed every check. We'd signed a full lease agreement. They'd paid first month, last month, and a security deposit. Move-in was scheduled for a Saturday morning. I was going to meet them there, hand over the keys, walk them through everything. I'd given my mother a spare key months earlier, back when I was doing renovations and needed someone to let contractors in while I was at work. I'd asked for it back twice. She kept forgetting to bring it. I should have been more firm about that. I know that now. I knew it then, honestly, but she's my mother, and asking her to do something simple twice already felt like nagging. I let it go. Saturday came. I drove to the condo feeling genuinely good. I had a little welcome basket in the passenger seat. Nothing fancy, just some dish soap, a candle, a card. I'd stayed up until 11 the night before writing the Hendersons a note about which burner on the stove ran hot, and which neighbor had a dog that barked on Wednesday mornings for some reason only the dog understood. I was thinking about that note when I pulled into the parking lot and noticed my sister's car. I know her car. She's had it for 6 years. A silver sedan with a dent in the rear bumper from a parking lot incident she still blames on a shopping cart. There was no reason for that car to be in my condo's parking lot on a Saturday morning. I sat there for a moment, just sat there, engine running, trying to construct a scenario where this made sense. Maybe she was visiting someone in the building. Maybe she was nearby and had parked here for some reason. Maybe I was wrong about the car. I was not wrong about the car. I texted the Hendersons that I was in the parking lot and walked toward the building. My heels were clicking on the pavement, and each click felt louder than it should have. I took the elevator up. I stood in front of my own door and heard clearly the sound of a television and my sister's laugh. I used my key. I walked in. My sister was on my couch. Her boyfriend was in my kitchen, eating something out of a bowl. There were 2 suitcases by the door and a duffel bag half unzipped on my floor. On my floor. The floor I had chosen and installed and paid $1,200 for in reclaimed hardwood because it was the one upgrade I let myself have. My sister looked up and her face did something complicated. Surprise, then a quick rearrangement into a smile. "Oh, you're here early," she said. "I want to tell you I stayed calm. I want to say I was the picture of composure. I was not." My voice came out completely flat, which is what happens to me when I'm so far past normal anger that my brain just stops generating inflection. "What are you doing here?" I said. Not a question. More like a statement my mouth needed to make out loud to confirm reality. "Mom said we could stay here," she said, "just for a few weeks while the situation with the new place gets sorted out." The situation with the new place. I knew about the situation with the new place. My sister and her boyfriend had been renting an apartment across town and had lost their lease because they'd had 3 noise complaints and a dispute with management over a pet they weren't supposed to have. This was not a sudden crisis. This had been developing for 2 months. And in those 2 months, not one person had called me to discuss whether the condo I owned, The condo I had tenants arriving at in approximately 45 minutes might be a solution. You talked to Mom, I said. She said you wouldn't mind. She said family comes first. Her boyfriend had come out of the kitchen. He was holding the bowl and looking at me with an expression that was trying very hard to be neutral. He wasn't succeeding. I could see he knew this was wrong, he just wasn't going to be the one to say it. I have tenants, I said. They have a signed lease, they paid a deposit, they're in the parking lot right now. My sister blinked. What? I'd been renting this unit out. For months. This was always the plan. I told Mom this was the plan. Something shifted in my sister's face. The confidence started to crack around the edges. She didn't say anything about tenants. That's not my problem, I said, and I was surprised by how steady my voice was when I said it. I need you to start gathering your things. She didn't move. She looked at her boyfriend, then back at me, and I saw her reset herself into a different mode. The one I'd watched her use our whole lives when she wanted something and wasn't getting it. The injured mode. The wounded bird. I can't believe you're doing this, she said quietly. We have nowhere to go. You have had 2 months to find somewhere to go. I'm not unsympathetic, but you cannot stay here. Can you just call Mom? I'm going to call Mom, but I also need you to be packed and out of this apartment before my tenants come upstairs because they are here and they have every legal right to be. I stepped back into the hallway and called my mother. She answered on the second ring, warm and cheerful, and I had to wait through about 4 seconds of her telling me about a sale at a store she liked before I could get a word in. Mom, I said, my sister is in my condo. Oh good, she made it safely. I was a little worried about the drive. Mom, I have tenants. They signed a lease. They're in the building right now. I am standing in the hallway of my own condo because I cannot go inside because my sister and her boyfriend have moved their luggage in. Silence. I gave her the spare key, my mother said, as if this explained everything, as if the existence of the key was the entire story. You don't own this condo, I said. You don't pay the mortgage. You don't pay the taxes or the insurance or the HOA fees. You cannot give anyone permission to live here. That's not how property works. She's family. She's family who has had 2 months to handle this situation. And you are family who has had months to ask me whether this was something I could help with. No one asked me anything. No one told me anything. I found out by showing up to hand over keys to people who have a legal contract. My mother's voice shifted. Got quieter, more pressured. You're going to put your sister out on the street to make money off strangers? I took a breath. A long one. I'm going to honor a legal agreement I made. The Hendersons are not strangers. They are people I vetted, who paid a deposit, who arranged their entire moving schedule around today. What you and my sister did is the thing that's wrong here. Not me. I hung up. I don't usually hang up on my mother. My hands were shaking slightly when I slid the phone back into my pocket. I texted the Hendersons, so sorry for the delay. There's a small issue I'm resolving right now. Give me 15 to 20 minutes. I'll make this right. They texted back almost immediately. No worries. Take your time. The kindness of that almost broke me a little, honestly. I went back inside. My sister was sitting exactly where she had been. Her boyfriend had put the bowl down and was very carefully examining something on his phone. She needs to figure this out herself, my sister said, meaning me. This is so typical. I need you to be out of this apartment, I said. I'm going to help you. I'm going to call around and find you a hotel for tonight, and I will help pay for it for tonight only. But you need to start packing. A hotel. A hotel. A hotel. Tonight. And then tomorrow, we can sit down and talk about what realistic options look like. But right now, in the next 15 minutes, I need you out of this unit. She stared at me. I looked back at her. I didn't look away. I've spent my entire adult life being the one who backs down, who softens, who finds some way to make everyone comfortable at my own expense. I thought about the security deposit sitting in my account. I thought about the Hendersons in the lobby. I thought about the note I'd written about the stove. I did not look away. Her boyfriend touched her shoulder. Let's just pack up, he said, quietly. She's right. I could have kissed him for that. Genuinely. My sister shot him a look I was glad I was only seeing from the side, and then she stood up and started moving toward the suitcases. It took 12 minutes. I know because I watched the clock on my phone the entire time, the longest 12 minutes I can remember. When they were at the door, my sister turned around. Mom is going to be upset about this. Mom is going to have to process that, I said. This is my property. This was my plan. No one consulted me, and I am not responsible for managing the consequences of decisions I wasn't part of. She left without saying anything else. Her boyfriend nodded at me on the way out. A small nod, but genuine. I stood in the middle of my own condo for 30 seconds. Just stood there. Then I went around quickly, straightened a cushion, ran a paper towel over the kitchen counter, confirmed the bowl had been rinsed at least. I opened a window to let some fresh air in. Then I texted the Hendersons, all clear, so sorry again. Ready for you whenever you are. They came up 5 minutes later. Mrs. Henderson had a plant tucked under her arm. A small potted thing she said she was planning to put on the kitchen windowsill. Mr. Henderson shook my hand and said the buildings seemed really well maintained. They were easy, warm, completely unbothered. I walked them through everything. The stove, the neighbor's dog, the parking situation, the recycling schedule. Mrs. Henderson laughed at the note I'd written. Mr. Henderson asked about the nearest grocery store, and I pulled up the map on my phone and showed him two, plus a farmer's market that ran on Sunday mornings 2 blocks over. When I left, Mrs. Henderson hugged me at the door. I made it back to my car before the adrenaline finished leaving my system, and I had to sit for a minute with the air conditioning on high, just breathing. That afternoon, I found my sister and her boyfriend a hotel room for one night. Budget, clean, close to the neighborhoods they were looking at. I texted her the confirmation number and said I could talk the next day if she wanted. She didn't respond for 3 days. When she did, she said she was sorry. Not a full apology. More of a sorry this happened than a sorry I did this. But it was something. We talked for almost an hour. I told her I wasn't angry at her as a person, but that what had happened wasn't acceptable, and that if she needed help in the future, she needed to come to me directly and give me the chance to actually say yes or no. Not go through our mother. Not assume. Ask. She said she understood. I believed her mostly. My mother took longer. She calls me 4 days after the incident and opened with a fairly detailed accounting of how I had embarrassed my sister in front of her boyfriend. I let her finish. Then I explained, calmly and without raising my voice, that I had honored a legal obligation and protected my own financial investment, and that the embarrassment had originated with the decision to enter my property without permission. She called it a spare key situation. I said a spare key is not a permission slip. We went in circles for a while. At the end of the call, I asked her to mail me the spare key or drop it off at my office. She said she would. Then I had a locksmith change the locks the following Tuesday, because I didn't entirely trust the timeline, and because honestly I should have done it the second the renovation was finished. The Hendersons have been there for 4 months now. Mrs. Henderson sends me a text every time something needs attention. A dripping faucet, a sticky window track. Mr. Henderson fixed a loose cabinet hinge himself and sent me a photo with a thumbs up emoji. They are, by every measure, exactly what I hoped for. My sister found a place, a 2-bedroom in a neighborhood a little farther out than she wanted, but hers. She and her boyfriend signed the lease 3 weeks after the incident. I congratulated her and I meant it. Things with my mother are functional. Not warm the way they used to be, but functional. I'm working on deciding how much warmth I want to rebuild and on what terms. What I know is this: I worked for that condo. I planned for it, saved for it, made decisions around it. And when someone tried to take it, not maliciously, maybe, but carelessly, without thought for what I built, I didn't apologize for it. I didn't soften the edges or find a way to make their comfort the priority. I just stood there and told the truth about what was mine. It turns out that was enough. Looking back now, I think the hardest part wasn't finding my sister's suitcases on my floor. It wasn't even the phone call with my mother. The hardest part was the moment I had to decide, in real time, with the Hendersons waiting downstairs and my hands slightly shaking, whether I was going to be the version of myself I'd always been, or a different one. I'd spent a long time being the person who absorbed things, who found the angle where everyone else's comfort could fit even when mine couldn't. And I want to be fair about why. It wasn't weakness exactly. It was a kind of reasoning that made sense for a long time. Keep the peace. Don't make it worse. Family is complicated, and the damage from a real confrontation can last for years. But here's what I didn't understand until that Saturday morning. Absorbing things isn't neutral. It has a cost, and the cost compounds. Every time I'd let something go, the key I'd asked for back twice, the conversations where my plans were discussed like they were suggestions rather than decisions, I was teaching everyone around me what to expect from me. And they learned. Of course they learned. People always do. What my sister and my mother did wasn't malicious. I actually believe that. They didn't sit down and plan to blindside me, they just didn't think of me as someone who would hold the line. And that's on both of us, honestly. On them for not thinking it through, and on me for spending years demonstrating that I wouldn't. The thing about standing your ground is that it only feels dramatic if you've never done it before. Once you do it, once you say this is mine and I'm not negotiating that fact, it turns out it's just a sentence. It's just the truth. I own the condo. I signed a lease with the Hendersons. My sister didn't have permission to be there. Those are just facts. The emotion around them was real, but the facts themselves were simple. Cause and consequence. My sister and my mother made a decision without information they should have sought out, and the consequence was that the decision fell apart. Not cruelly. I found them a hotel, I paid for the first night, I showed up the next week ready to talk. But the plan didn't hold because it was built on an assumption that turned out to be wrong. That I would adjust, that I would find a way, that my plans were flexible enough to absorb theirs. They weren't, and I said so. What I've thought about since is this. Being a person of integrity doesn't mean being rigid or unkind. It means your actions and your words line up. I worked 3 years for that condo. I had a plan. I followed through on every part of it. When something threatened it, I protected it, calmly, without cruelty but firmly. That's not selfishness. That's just being someone whose yes means yes and whose no means no. The Hendersons sent me a photo last month. A little herb garden Mrs. Henderson had set up on the kitchen windowsill right where she said she'd put it. The plant is thriving, so is the lease. So, slowly am I. I changed the locks, I had to change a few other things too. It was worth it.